today, mostly I've been talking about this goal of enlightenment, right? So how close are you all feeling? Right? Sometimes this goal can feel so far away, and our meditation practice only serves to make us aware of how much work we have to do to get there, right? But you shouldn't be put off by that. Tomorrow I'll be talking about the Buddha's words on the gradual nature of enlightenment. So these meditation sessions that you've been doing, these are all like little drops in our enlightenment bucket, little steps on that journey to enlightenment. And so you should always feel good about the effort that you've made to practice. And you should be chuffed. Yeah, you really should. You know, this is how you are going to develop your mind. You are not going to get closer to enlightenment by not doing this. Does that make sense? You know, this is an essential part of that journey. But we have this goal, this destination in mind, far off though it may seem. We're also so lucky because we have this map, this path that's been laid out for us by the Buddha, which is the Eightfold Noble Path. And 3 parts of that path are about meditation specifically. Those 3 things are right effort, right mindfulness, and right samadhi. Other parts of the path are about our ethical conduct, our behavior, what we do outside of our meditation practice, things that will help support our meditation, having good ethical conduct, not getting into slanging matches, not doing activities that will cause harm or cause you regret. These things, of course, will help condition the mind in a wholesome way so that when you come to sit, your mind feels good. And those wisdom aspects of the path, the right view, the right intention, these things will also help us both outside and inside of our meditation practice. But today I want to focus on, because this is a meditation retreat, on the meditation aspects of the path. And the reason I want to do this is because although that goal, that destination, feels like it's really far away, the way that we get there is by the meditation path. And so we're going to need to work on our meditation tools to help us. And this is perhaps something that you've become painfully aware of in the last few hours, that you need some tools to help you develop your mind. And so perhaps the most important part of the path is understanding what is skillful and what is unskillful, what is wholesome or unwholesome, what is beneficial or unbeneficial, in really basic terms, what is good and what is bad. If we really pay attention to these things, then we can make swift progress on the path. That's why before I was talking about that little balanced effort that you need to make to be aware and alert, but not, for some reason I'm remembering that fridge magnet from John Howard's time, alert but not alarmed, was that it? Remember that? Anyway, so we don't want to be alarmed, we don't want to be overwrought and putting too much energy in and getting agitated, nor do we want to become so relaxed that we no longer notice what's going on, right? So this is tendencies that we have in the mind. We want to find that middle ground where we're really comfortable, but we're bright and alert. And this is difficult to find. The reason it's difficult is because of what's going on in our mind. But when we have that good place where we're feeling balanced and we're seeing clearly, the mind feels calm and peaceful, then we can see what's going on because we've developed some mindfulness. And that feeling of balance, that feeling of being able to see clearly, that is our mindfulness becoming strong. And this is very useful because it gives us the information we need to know what's happening in our mind. And then our job is to not just let it happen, but to respond accordingly. And for many meditators, this can be quite confronting news, that you're actually involved in your meditation, right? That you have a role to play. Many of us will think about these kind of meditations that we do, like, I had a really great meditation. My meditation was terrible. We tend to associate ourselves with the good meditator. I had a great meditation. The bad meditation, oh, I just couldn't concentrate. My mind was just doing all this stuff to me, like happening to you. I wasn't involved at all. There was nothing I could do. So these are some ways that we kind of delude ourselves. You know, when we have good meditation, we think that we've done something. When we have bad meditation, it's something that happened to us. So this tells us a lot about the nature of our mind. And it tells us a lot about ways of practicing. So many meditation techniques will encourage you to do absolutely nothing, to only observe, right? Have you encountered this kind of meditation instruction? How does that work for you? Gradually, over time, hopefully, a small part of your mind will learn a little bit of wisdom. But this can be very, very slow and arduous. It can take a really long time. And this just doing nothing, just observing, is not actually how the Buddha taught meditation. He didn't say just do nothing. If you think about it, just doing nothing is what we've been doing already. And how is that working out? Sometimes just doing nothing, just observing, means that we're just giving more and more fuel for the defilements of the mind. We're indulging them rather than restraining them. And so this means, if we practice like this, that we're not practicing right effort, samavayama. Because right effort, defined by the Buddha, is overcoming negative, unwholesome, unskillful, unbeneficial, bad mental states, and developing wholesome, beneficial, skillful, good mental states. So there's 4 aspects to this right effort. Most of you, I think, will already know what they are. It's easy to know what they are. It's difficult to practice them, right? So we have this effort, and it's an effort, right? We have to put some energy into it. We need to participate in our meditation practice, right? We need to have that awareness of what's going on and to have that wisdom aspect, that discernment of understanding, this is unwholesome, this is wholesome. We need to be able to see what kind of results one can expect from that thought, that activity. So the 4 right efforts. First 2 are the unwholesome and the unskillful. The last two are the wholesome and skillful. Back to the first two. The first is the effort to prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from arising in your mind. To prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from arising in your mind. Second is to abandon the already arisen unwholesome states in your mind. Prevent, abandon. The way I think about this is like a canoe. It's got a hole in it. First thing you have to do is patch the hole, right? You prevent more water from coming in. Only then can you abandon the water that's already in the canoe, right? No point abandoning it when you haven't prevented, right? You just get more water coming in. And so this is our right effort to prevent and abandon. And then we want to cultivate, to develop. We put effort in to cultivating and developing unarisen, wholesome states of mind. The good stuff. We want to develop those wholesome, beneficial, skillful states of mind that are not yet there. We make an effort to develop them. And then the last of our right efforts, the effort to maintain those already arisen, wholesome, skillful, beneficial states. It's the hard part, right? To maintain. And so this is the right effort described by the Buddha. So we need to understand then what are these unwholesome, unskillful, unbeneficial things. What are these beneficial, wholesome, skillful things? Like, we need to be able to discern them, right? We need to see what these are. We need to know good and bad. Without this skill, without this wisdom, our mind is just churning away and we never learn. And this is the problem with bare attention, as it's taught in some mindfulness techniques, where we're just observing. If we're not careful, we'll spend the entire session in the grip of one of those unbeneficial, unwholesome activities. We won't feel like we have any role to play in abandoning it, let alone preventing it from coming again. It's just what happened. It just came into my mind. Nothing to do with me. And to some extent, that might be true, that these things are conditioned, that they arise because of conditions. In many ways, this is true, because we have been training our mind, right? Every day. Wait, let me see if I've got my mind trainer here. Ah, here it is. This is how we train our mind, right? This is what we're doing. This is how we're training our mind. And this is the way we spend our time. So it'll have an effect on our mind, right? We're conditioning our mind in this way. Some of you have jobs where your role is to plan and think and worry, find problems. And so then when you come to sit in meditation, what is your mind doing, right? It's doing those activities. So we're always conditioning our mind. And so in some ways, yes, these things seem to appear, beyond your control, but actually it's because of the way you've been conditioning your mind. And that's great to know, because it means that you can condition your mind in other ways too. You can train your mind, and that's the whole path. The Buddha said to cease evil actions, to cultivate the good, to purify your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. It's possible. It's possible to train your mind. This is the whole path. We don't just want to sit watching the mind like an observer. This is our opportunity to train the mind. This is the entire path. So what are those unwholesome, unskillful, unbeneficial things? Does anyone know? I'll give you a hint. Very good. The hindrances, the pancha nivaranas, the 5 hindrances. What are they? Someone today said, I've had so many talks on the hindrances. and yet, and this is why it's so important. And for me, sometimes as a monk, I think, oh gosh, I've got to give another talk on the hindrances. And I say, what are the 5 hindrances? Remember we talked about them a little while ago, and people are like, so I'm like, okay. You know, the Buddha didn't mind giving talks on subjects over and over and over and over again. And the reason why this is necessary is because of the incredible habits that we've gotten into in our minds, where even though we hear these things and we understand them, we still can't put them into practice. Even though we know, oh, these are the hindrances, we find it very difficult to abandon them. So what are these 5 hindrances? Don't worry, it's not a test. It's very good.
Sensual desire.
Sensual desire, sense desire, desire for sensory experiences, right? So this we talked about a little bit today. So I don't want to go too much into it, but just to remind you that this is the stuff that firstly will prevent you from getting onto the cushion, and then when you experience it in your meditation, this is the stuff that will end up driving you to all sorts of fantasies. And it doesn't matter what those fantasies are. I remember sitting in meditation retreat when I was quite young with a friend, and she just looked like she was meditating so well, and she was perfectly poised and still. And I said to her later, I was like, oh, you look like you had a great meditation. And she said, no, I was having sexual fantasies the whole time. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, so that might be one of your sense desires. You know, for monks, it's usually like imagining the perfect monastery. Building it in your mind, castles in the air. It could be 80s music. It could be anything, you know. It doesn't matter what it is, and I don't want to shame or judge anyone about the kind of thoughts that you've been having. I'm also not going to ask you. I don't want to know. But it could be chocolate cake, it could be nachos, it could be anything, it doesn't matter. For some people it'll be Georgian townhouses, who knows? It's just going to be something that's going to occupy your mind and delight you, keep you entertained, wanting more. And so when the Buddha talked about these hindrances, he gave a series of images which I often share and I think are really powerful. And they really helped me when I finally heard about them, because no one told me about the hindrances for so long, and I wasted so much of my time in meditation, years, just letting these hindrances bubble forth in my mind, not understanding that I actually could have meditation experiences without them. Not understanding that these were a problem. Just thinking, this is my mind and I've just got to deal with it. It wasn't very skillful. So the Buddha, when he talked about these hindrances, used this series of similes of a beautiful, clear bowl of water. So many of you, I've shared this with you before, but it's very powerful. This series of similes really helps you understand what goes on in your mind when these unwholesome, unskillful states are there. So the mind that we want to have is this mind which is calm, clear, cool, pure water, completely still. You can imagine it in like a glass bowl. Just so still, so clear, so pure. Nothing happening. That's the kind of mind that we want. That's the kind of mind that can see clearly, that knows what's going on, that is not obscured or obstructed, that is pure, free from defilements, right? That's the kind of mind we want. When it comes to the hindrance of sense desire, the Buddha said it's like that bowl of water with colourful dyes thrown in. So I guess this was what passed for entertainment at the time of the Buddha, right? Like colourful dyes in water, yeah? It does actually look quite pretty, yeah? It's like when you do a bit of marbling or dyeing, or... And I've seen that paint pouring has become a thing on TikTok and Instagram. Have you seen that, where people pour paint onto a canvas? And it's like quite addictive. You know, it's just colour and movement. And it's the same with that bowl of water, just colour and movement, colourful dyes bleeding around in that water. And if you think about it, sense desire is very much like this, like movies, colour and movement, excitement, activity, right? This is what stimulates our mind. And so this is the hindrance. What happens with the mind that's got colourful activities swirling about it? It's not calm and it's not peaceful, it's not still, it's busy, it's agitated. There's a lot of movement. When sense desire comes into your mind, there's a lot of movement of the mind. And that is not what we want from our meditation practice. So you've probably seen this when you start thinking, fantasizing, wanting, craving something sensual in your meditation. The amount of movement in the mind, the agitation, the swirling that happens to your thoughts. And how far that is away from that cool, clear, calm, still bowl of water. So in this way, we begin to understand something about our mind. The first thing is that we enjoy sense desire, right? There's an enjoyment aspect to it. That's why it's so wonderful to think about these things. We enjoy it. What we need to start recognizing as meditators is the drawbacks of these things. And that can be harder to see. But the fact that our mind is agitated, swirling, busy, craving, wanting, these are drawbacks. Our mind is not calm, it's not peaceful, it's not still. And you start to see clearly the agitation is suffering. The stillness is peace. So we should understand these sensory thoughts have drawbacks. And then we need to find the escape. And I'll talk about that in a little while. So the second hindrance, what's the second hindrance? Ill will, bhayapada, ill will. We also enjoy ill will, don't we? Yes. It's described by the Buddha as being like this bubbling, boiling water, agitated, energy, hot. It'll burn you, that water. And we can understand from our own experience of ill will what that's like, that kind of bubbling, boiling energy coming into the body and the mind, the power that ill will gives us, that fight energy, right? And so when this comes into the mind, it's incredibly distracted, it's incredibly agitated. That boiling, bubbling water is just agitating the whole body and the whole mind. It'll keep you awake at night, right? You lie there sleeping, but because you've been engaging in this ill will, this hatred and anger, it'll still be there bubbling through your body and mind at night. You won't get any peace. And so this is one way that we can understand some of the drawbacks. You know, we enjoy it because we feel powerful and strong. When we've got that fight energy in the body, it's like the adrenaline rushing through the body, right? But the drawback is that it can't last, that kind of energy can't last. You feel depleted and exhausted after you've been full of anger and hate. The drawback is that it's suffering. That mind is not still, it's not clear, it's not calm. It's bubbling and boiling. So you're very far away from that clear, still, cool bowl of water. You can't see anything clearly with a mind of ill will. It distorts your vision. Anyway, keep moving. Third hindrance. Sloth and torpor. Bhante Sujato uses less abstruse words. Dullness and drowsiness. So the dullness is like the mental aspect and the drowsiness is the physical aspect. And this, we all know this one, right? That's dullness and drowsiness. Or you can feel a little like sinking. The mind is sinking down, just like the body is sinking down. And you feel heavy, and everything is a slog, like walking through wet cement. The mind is just so not bright, so not alert. And it's very close to sleep, which is of course very close to delusion, right? And you start to have those dreams in your meditation, and you see how far away your mind goes and how quickly it goes, right? And then you're back. So the way the Buddha describes this in this series of similes is like that bowl of water with pond slime and algae and plants on top. There's that kind of slimy, you know how sometimes you see sloths and they've got moss growing on them because they're so slow? That's like the mind of sloth and torpor, dullness and drowsiness. It's like heavy and soggy, and we can't see clearly. It's obscured, it's obstructed. The disadvantage, the drawbacks of a mind of sloth and torpor, you're nowhere near clarity and brightness and alertness. You're on the way to Betty Buys. And so when you're asleep, you're not going to be making a lot of progress in your meditation. So this is a drawback, right? It's enjoyable. There is an enjoyment to it, right? It feels so nice and warm. So I remember this story, I think Bhante Akaliko told this story, or was it Ajahn Brahm, of a monk who had a problem with sloth and torpor, always dropping off like this. And so they sent these monks who have a problem with sloth and torpor to like monk training camp, and there they would train them, and they would put like a box of matches on their head, so that if they were to fall forward, they'd have to wake up, right? And so he was sent there for a period, and he stayed there for a long time. Then he came back to the monastery, and then falling asleep. And it's the same with us. Sometimes we can kind of we kind of train ourselves to endure this sloth and torpor, but we're not very skillful about it. We're just doing the same thing. We're kind of falling asleep. Oh, wake up, falling asleep, wake up. But what we actually need to do is take evasive action sometimes. So the Buddha said if you're experiencing this hindrance, and it's quite common for a lot of us because we're exhausted from our busy lives, so it's quite likely that we'll experience this purely because we're tired. So firstly, although the Buddha talks about wakefulness and making effort in our practice, if you're really tired because you're physically exhausted and drained, just rest. Just give yourself permission to rejuvenate your body so that you can feel good. This will be very helpful. We don't need to push ourselves to do 1,000 things a day to the point where we're just so tired we just can't even. And a lot of people, when I see them, they're just recovering from life and they're pushing themselves to get good meditation. It's like, just relax, just chill out, And so that's why this schedule that I put together is quite light, it's not too heavy. You've come from a really busy world. You've been working, you've got families, you've got so much on in your lives. And then to come away on a retreat for a short period and just like force you to work really hard, you wouldn't even get to see nature. What's the point in coming down here? You couldn't look at the stars. What's the point in coming to the countryside if you're not just going to allow yourself a little bit of downtime? So that's one skillful way of dealing with the physical aspect. When it's mental aspect, that dullness and drowsiness that can come, then you do need to take some evasive action. So the Buddha said, things you can do include pulling your ears, right? Standing up, doing walking meditation, giving yourself a good talking to, remembering all the Dharma that you've ever heard, right? So these sorts of things are ways that you kind of counteract that dullness and drowsiness. You can also visualize a bright light in your mind. Some people find meditating with their eyes open is a way that they can stop that. So there's some strategies that you have, right, for that. Anyway, fourth hindrance. Restlessness and remorse. So these are like a bit tricky, these hindrances. Like the third hindrance is 2 of them. The fourth hindrance is 2 of them. So they kind of come together. They're like these hyphenated words in the Pali. And so restlessness and remorse, we know this one, right? Yeah? This is the one when you finally make it onto the cushion. After putting it off all week because of your restless mind, then you come to sit down and you think, why don't I just quickly vacuum the house? Like, you'll do anything, right, to get away from meditating. You'll find something to do because the mind has been conditioned with this restlessness. Restless energy, right? Restless wanting something. Anything. Give me anything. So this is that restless mind that moves us, pushes us, sweeps us away from being present, pushes us into the future, this restlessness, doesn't it? Oh, I just go do this. I'll just go do that. Movement towards the future. And the remorse is this movement towards the past, remembering, oh, why did I do that? How could I have said that thing? Pushing the mind to the past. And so this hindrance, the Buddha said, is like that bowl of water with waves, swept by the wind, agitated, disturbed, choppy. That's what it's like in your mind, right? Very choppy waves, sometimes big waves of restlessness. Pushes you off your seat, off you go. Sometimes very, very subtle restlessness. Just looking for something to do. Just looking. Just this movement of the mind. Not settled, not still, not calm. And the Buddha said that this hindrance is a bit like a slave driver, always telling us what to do. We're the slave, right? We think we're in charge of our mind, but when we've got this hindrance that has overtaken us, it's just the hindrance pushing us, telling us, go do something, go do this, go do that. And we're like, we've got no control, we're not free. So this is that hindrance of restlessness and remorse. The last hindrance is the hindrance of doubt. Doubt, not knowing. Not knowing what? Not knowing the distance to the moon? No! This is not these kinds of doubts. Not knowing what is skillful, what is unskillful, what is to be cultivated or abandoned, what is useful or not useful. Doubts about the teaching, doubts about the teacher, does he know what he's talking about? Doubts about your ability to practice. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? The other day when I was talking about this, a woman piped up and said, it's like a worm in an apple. I was like, yeah, it does. It just eats away at your practice. If you have these doubts, you just can't make progress. The Buddha said it was like someone who's lost in a desert, doesn't know which way to go. And that's how it feels when this doubt is in our mind. This hindrance is very debilitating. The image that he used is that image of that bowl of water with mud, dirt. We can't see. There's no clarity. It's just muddy. How do we know what's in there? You know? So these are the 5 hindrances. We'll go through them again. Sense desire, which is like a bowl with coloured dyes. Yeah. Ill will, which is like bubbling, boiling water. Dullness and drowsiness, sloth and torpor, which is like slime, yeah, slime. The 4th one, restlessness and remorse, right? That water which is choppy and wavy, yeah. The last one, doubt, which is like that bowl of water which is muddy. Yes, so these are the 5 hindrances. These are those unwholesome, unskillful, unbeneficial, bad states. So we have to have an understanding of why they're bad, right? So we need to understand firstly the enjoyment that we get out of them, why we allow them into our mind and entertain them, why we let them overpower our mind, destroy our mindfulness. We enjoy them. We need to recognize the enjoyment aspect of these hindrances. Then, most importantly, we need to recognize the drawbacks. This is why I've been asking you, what's been going on in your mind? What are the types of things that have been leading away from peace and clarity? What are they? If you look closely, you'll see that they're the hindrances. When you say, I had a bad meditation, the reason is because your mind was full of the hindrances. When you say, I had a good meditation, the reason is the hindrances were low. We need to understand where these hindrances come from, how they arise, where they originate from, and how they cease. We need to understand how to cultivate. I'll get to that tomorrow. We need to understand how they appear in our mind, right? So in this way we're doing the Satipatthanas, yeah? We're investigating the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We're looking at the Chittanupassana, the mind. What is the quality of your mind with a hindrance in it? You know, with a hindrance like sloth and torpor, the quality of the mind is heavy, small, sinking down, cramped, like someone in prison, the Buddha says. When that is absent, the mind might be bright and happy and peaceful, right? So we need to understand the quality of the mind. And then we need to do the Dhammanupassana sati, the phenomena, the mental phenomena. This is specifically where we do the understanding of how these things appear in our mind and how they disappear, where they come from, how they go. And this specifically is about the hindrances. And that's why we need to practice this right effort to prevent and abandon them. It's no point not recognizing them. We won't make any progress on the spiritual path, or if we do, it'll be very slow. We're so lucky to hear about the hindrances, to know, there's these things. And if I recognize them through my mindfulness, that already is a huge thing. If you recognize it, you have made a great leap in your meditation practice. Not recognizing it, not labeling it, not seeing it, not understanding it, means that you're not mindful, you're not aware, you haven't understood the drawbacks. You're just letting this stuff happen. If you truly understood this hindrance, then you would definitely want to be aware of it, mindful of it, because it destroys your clarity. It destroys your peace. The Buddha said of these kinds of mind states, they cause harm for you. They cause harm for others. They cause harm for both you and others. They obstruct wisdom. They cause vexation, and they do not lead to Nibbana. We're trying to get to Nibbana. We don't want the hindrances. When the Buddha talked about the hindrances, he gave some similes. I shared one with you. Another is the image of a fast-moving mountain stream that has a lot of power and energy pushing down the mountain, a lot of speed, a lot of potency. However, hindrances are like someone coming along and digging channels at the side of that river. What would happen? The water is diverted down the channels, the power, the energy of that river is weakened, made impotent. This is what happens to our mind. When a hindrance is present, the energy and the power that could be present in our mind, if that hindrance wasn't there, that energy is weakened. And we see this sometimes when our mind in meditation is a little free from the hindrances. We're like, wow, there's a lot of energy in my mind. I feel really powerful. Yeah, because you're not entertaining the hindrances in there anymore, which suck all your energy away so that you can fantasize about the perfect monastery. Right? This takes you away from stillness and clarity, and it impedes that energy flow of the mind. And so you can start to imagine with this simile just how powerful the mind would be without those hindrances present. And this is true. When those hindrances are suppressed, that is when deep meditation can occur, the jhanas. We need to overcome those 5 hindrances to enter deep states of meditation. That's why we want to abandon them. That's why we want to prevent them. Another image the Buddha used was the image of a strangle vine, a strangler vine, a strangling vine, which climbs up around a tree and strangles it to death. It completely overpowers the mind. That's why when you've been meditating and indulging in fantasies or hating on politicians, falling asleep, thinking about all the activities you could do or wondering, is this right or wrong? When you've been in the grip of a hindrance, you could have been in that grip for 20, 30, 40 minutes, right? It's completely overpowered your mind, strangled it completely. And then, when you realize, I've been thinking about this when I should be meditating, this is a wonderful moment. Mindfulness has finally returned. That whole time, you have been unmindful. If you were truly mindful, you would not allow this hindrance to enter or overpower your mind, because you recognized the drawbacks of what it would do to your clarity, to your peace, to the energy of your mind. So if you are truly mindful, you won't allow these things in. This is the effort to prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from entering your mind. And this is possible when you have strong mindfulness. Your mindfulness has a job to do. It sees over there a hindrance coming for you. The image that I'm using lately in my teaching is the train coming into the station. Have you seen that in your own mind? The ill will train is coming. It's pushing up, you feel it, this kind of like little bit of aversion, little bit of hatred towards a sound you hear, someone moving, a light coming on, the birds, the leaf blower, whatever it is, right? A little bit of aversion pops into the mind. If you keep paying attention to that, you're just going to give it fuel, right? Your repeated attention grows that. And it's like that train coming into the station. It's over there. You see it out of the corner of your mind. It's pulling up to the platform, and you have a choice. Are you going to get on the train? You know where that train goes? To ill will town. Anger, hatred, indulging this mind of ill will. You have a choice. Are you going to get on the train? Same with the train that goes to Sleepy Town. You all know that one. This is the train coming along. You have a choice. You're going to get on that train. You know where it goes, right? So in this way, we can understand that effort to prevent, the way we prevent is through mindfulness, strong mindfulness. We know what's going on. We know what's going on in our mind, and we're able to identify the hindrance as it's trying to get in. Our mindfulness is there to protect us. If we've really got strong mindfulness, the mind has no time to go off and invite a hindrance in. We're occupied with the subject of our meditation, the breath, or whatever. That's what we're supposed to be working with. When our mindfulness becomes weak or lapses, that's when that train starts pulling up to the station, right? That's when we have the opportunity to prevent. And that moment is really important. It's really important. And as you get more and more practice with mindfulness, more and more strength and power of mindfulness, you start to see those hindrances earlier and earlier because the mind becomes more subtle and refined. It can see any movement of the mind. And merely being aware is often enough to prevent it from arising completely. Merely being aware, restlessness, is enough to destroy it, to make it vanish. However, sometimes they'll sneak in, right? We weren't mindful enough. It snuck in behind our defenses. And that's when we need the right effort of abandoning. We need to consciously let it go. Not indulge in the enjoyment of it. We need to recognize the drawbacks of it. Even if it's just, this is a hindrance. Even if it's a bit more complicated. Well, the Buddha said this is like a bowl of boiling water. It's just going to get hot and bubbly. It's going to boil me. Maybe that's enough. That little conversation in your mind is enough to help you abandon it. Sometimes you might need more effort. Try not to use too much will. Try to use wisdom. This does not lead to Nibbana. This causes problems. So that's the wisdom aspect of our meditation practice. And this is how we're actively involved in our meditation, right? We are actively involved in our meditation. If you allow those hindrances to persist, you're only going to have the hindrances. Eventually, hopefully, mindfulness will return. But you've wasted your 1 hour of meditation a week, right? And on a retreat like this, we get this opportunity to see more and more the mind. We get the opportunity to develop this muscle of mindfulness and practice that escape from those hindrances. Because there is an escape. You don't have to have these in your mind. That's how the Buddha taught. That's why the Buddha taught this right effort, so that we prevent and abandon these things from being present in our mind. So, that's the right effort to abandon and to, prevent and abandon. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about the right effort to cultivate wholesome, skillful, helpful, good states of mind, and how to maintain those wholesome states. And of course, these wholesome, skillful, beneficial states, these are, does anyone know? The 7 bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening. So that makes sense, right? That's the thing you've got to cultivate and develop and maintain if you want to get to that destination Nibbana. That's part of our journey. We can't expect these things just to happen by themselves. We need to develop it, right? If they just happen by themselves, why haven't they happened already? No, this is part of our right effort. We need to make this effort to cultivate and develop these 7 factors of awakening. And the good news is we've been doing some of this already, right? We've been practicing mindfulness. We've been doing investigation into the Dhammas, reflecting, reviewing what's going on in my mind. So we're already cultivating, developing these wholesome states of mind that will help us. And tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more about these bojjhangas, these awakening factors that we need to develop in order to complete our journey to Nibbana. So that's the right effort aspect of the path. And just to finish up with a simile from the commentator Buddhaghosa, when he discussed the role of the meditation factors, the 3 meditation factors of right effort, right mindfulness, and right samadhi, right stillness. This, he said, was the image of 3 boys picking a flower. 3 boys picking a flower. Right effort is a boy on his hands and knees. Oh, I've got to use my hands. Right effort is a boy on his hands and knees. Right samadhi is the boy standing on that boy's back, and he's picking the flower. And over here is right mindfulness. He's helping that right samadhi stay steady. Does that make sense? I think I did a good job explaining it. 3 boys picking a flower, 1 boy on his hands and knees, another guy standing here, 1 on his back, who is supported by this guy here so that he can pick the flower. That right effort is that force that provides the lift that will help us get closer to that flower. That right mindfulness is the steadying, supporting factor that helps us. And right samadhi is the boy picking the flower on the back of right effort, supported by right mindfulness. So this is how these 3 things work. And the Buddha said, in practice, these things circle around each other. They help each other. They support each other. And that's what you've started to see in your meditation practice, that mindfulness helps you with right effort. Right effort helps you with your meditation. So these things support each other. And that's why we need to practice all 3 of these things. And that's why we do have a role to play in our meditation practice. We can't just do nothing. If we're to just do nothing, then the meditation won't progress. One last image. You know that I like images, right? I like similes, yeah? I'm a visual learner. Is the image of the goldsmith. And again, this is how the Buddha taught. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. This is how the Buddha taught meditation. And so when you hear other teachers from different traditions, different schools, new techniques, TM, trademark techniques, things like that, always compare it to the teachings of the Buddha. That way you can make a informed judgment about how useful the practice is. So when the Buddha taught meditation, he taught this kind of activity of the mind where we have a role to play. We're not just passive observers, we're part of this meditation process. And this image of the goldsmith who wants to transform a lump of gold and other stuff into pure gold has a job to do, right? And so the Buddha said, at some times, that goldsmith is going to have to fan the bellows, right? To produce the fire that's necessary for that gold to become hot so that it melts. You need the bellows pushing oxygen in to fan that fire, to make the fire nice and warm, just like the one we have in the other room. And then from time to time, the goldsmith will need to pour water onto the gold to cool it so that it doesn't get too hot. And then sometimes the goldsmith will have to do nothing. If that goldsmith was only fanning the bellows, that gold would get too hot and would burn. If that goldsmith only sprinkled water, the gold would become brittle and crack. If the goldsmith only did nothing, the gold would never get purified. In the same way, from time to time, our mind might become sluggish, dull. That's the time to increase the energy in the mind. Sometimes our mind is too hot and too agitated. That's the time to cool down the mind. At other times, everything is going well, and then you should do nothing. Get out of the way. Don't interfere. Let the process happen. But you need to know what time, what is necessary at that time. And so yes, there is a time for doing nothing in your meditation practice. But you need to know when that is. And you need to know when there is a time for you to respond. And so this is a talk about right effort and how we can use it in our meditation practice, and the five hindrances. So I hope that it will be helpful for you for the rest of your meditation retreat. We have such precious little time left. We're already halfway through, right? Goes just like that. But you've been developing your mind, you've been practicing mindfulness, you've been investigating, you've been listening to the teachings, and you've been doing your meditation, and all this will help you over the next day and a half. Does anyone have any questions before we finish up? Small questions, very welcome. Big questions, I don't know.
Just that analogy that was 3 words you said from the commentator.
Buddhaghosa.
So is that old?
It's old,
Yeah.
but not as old as the Buddha.
No.
So Buddhaghosa lived, who's good with this, like 1,300?
That one?
Yeah. So that's when he was around, and the Buddha was like 2,500, 2,600 years ago. The commentaries were compiled and attributed to Buddhaghosa, and he said that these were based on old Sinhala commentaries, and that so this was compiled in Sri Lanka in what we'd call our Middle Ages, and so he reviewed these old commentaries which no longer exist, and so that could have been something that was an older teaching, or it could have been something that he came up with. He was an incredible mind, Acharya Buddhaghosa, and so he often at that distance was able to put things in a different way that would benefit people, and that's things that we find in the commentaries. But yeah, so that, I can't remember where that is. It might be in the Visuddhimagga, it might be in the commentary on the Samyutta Nikaya, I'm not sure, but yeah, I just remember it's one of his. Anything else? No? Do you want to do more meditation, or do you just want to go to bed? Anyway, I won't force you to do any more meditation together as a group, but if you want to, you can. You can do some more meditation, you can stay up, you can sit next to the fire, go out walking under the starlight, you can sit in your room under your duna and do some more meditation. It's quite good to do some before bed, but don't do it in bed, otherwise along comes the train to Sleepy Town, right? So then tomorrow morning the bell goes at 6. I don't know why it goes at 6. I must be becoming really soft in my old age, because I think I used to have like 4 o'clock wake up. So if you want to wake up at 4 o'clock, you can, right? This is your time. If you need rest, then rest, no problem. So we're here at 6:30 for our morning meditation, which is chanting to wake up the mind, and then we'll have some breakfast. So that's what's happening in the next little while, and we'll finish by doing the closing homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅgham Namami. Good. So, well done everyone, survived a whole day and a half of meditation retreat, and I look forward to seeing you in the morning. Have a good night.